I mean, I've talked to Idris about this, and the fact is, this is almost his Bond. It is his Bond.
Okay, Josh Elliott for Narcity. Hi, Andy. How are you?
Hey, Josh. How you doing, man?
I'm good. It's good to see you in person. I feel like, we're so used to seeing you as Gollum or King Kong or Caesar and all these great roles, but I've always been curious. Like, is it a relief for you to play a role like this where you can just be you?
I've people have asked me this, and I say, because I've never really drawn a distinction between acting in a performance capture suit and live action in the more conventional sense. For me, it's another role, and a very interesting and a really dark role it happens to be this time round. People say, oh, it's great to see your face and finally see you, and it's like, well, the thing is, you've seen me. It's just I've been sort of deeply buried in another character. But so it's interesting, the perception that people have.
Totally, and I'll admit, like, coming into this, I had never seen a Luther show or anything like that. So seeing this movie, it really struck me as like this amazing blend of like James Bond and the Batman, and obviously you as the villain feel like a perfect blend of that. What drew you to the role of David for this, and how did you put that character together?
Well, that's really incredible that you think of it like that. I mean, because I think you're absolutely right. It is those things. But it's also in the series, which I did know of and was a bit a fan of. It classically kind of relies on the villains being a normality to them, having a mundanity to them almost, but also that it is grit, emotionally truthful, dark, and there is a grit to it. So that combined with the elevated genre kind of, that you've just mentioned, made it a very fertile ground, I think, for a character like David Roby to exist in, particularly because his relationship is very much about manipulation through the internet, through social media, through using the dark web, and all the technology that he is a master manipulator of. And so I mean, as a character, he is a psychopath. There's no question. He's a psychopath. He's a serial killer, but he's also a product of a world that we have all bought into. And he has become an isolated, lonely individual who can't connect with the rest of humanity. And I think that was what about the character that made me really want to play him, was to examine that and really look at how people are shamed, how people are isolated and desensitized because of this big technology that we've just completely given up responsibility to, and that we allow to dominate our lives to a huge degree.
Jamie, I want to ask you, so I'll confess, this is my first experience with Luther. I had a great time, and I was really struck by just how subtle Idris is in the role. And I really want to come to one moment in the movie where I think it's about the middle. He's giving a mom some news she doesn't want to deal with, and then he kind of just sits there and lets her process it, and he doesn't jump in. What's it like to be able to trust an actor with that kind of subtlety on screen?
I've got hairs on the back of my neck because you just mentioned probably my favorite moment in the film. The thing about Idris is, and Hattie, who played Corin in that scene, they're both incredibly schooled, brilliant actors. They're both incredibly open. Idris knows that character better than I will ever know it, but he enters into a space and he says, come and join me and we'll have a play. And the moments like that little head shift that he does as he looks at her, as he gives her time to process, was all Idris. I think working with actors who are as instinctively brilliant at that, my greatest responsibility is just to make sure they've got a space where they feel safe enough to do it. But you can only hope that you have an actor that is so instinctively brilliant. Watching Idris enjoy that space and explore that space through that character in that live way. That was take one that we used in the film. It was just extraordinary.
one of the things which Idris enjoys and gets satisfaction from in playing the character is that he becomes a vector by which Idris is able to express a certain essential tenderness that is true of him. So those moments of profound empathy and tenderness, as well as being a function of an actor's kind of supreme skill and judgment, are also true of who Idris is. Mm-hmm. So you get the conjunction of those two very special things.
Do you know what? I think that's a really important point. I think those moments allow us to see more of Idris than the rest of Luther maybe, because obviously it won't surprise you to know that then they're not the same person, and Idris has a kind of a particular joy and tenderness as a person, and how he can spot someone's pain. You know, he enters into, when we're shooting, you know, as a producer, he took it very seriously. He'll look round the set, and if the process is making anybody feel smaller, he doesn't like it. And he'll make sure that everybody feels empowered. And I think, you know, that moment that you picked on there says a lot about who Luther is, and a lot about who Idris is, and also says a lot about Luther at its best, I have to say.
Well, and speaking of that big technology, I feel like the thing that Idris especially can't seem to escape is there's always this talk about him being Bond and all of that. You know, after going through this experience working with him and seeing him in this role, do you think he's got a great resume, but could this movie almost be his cover letter for a Bond role?
I mean, I've talked to Idris about this, and the fact is, this is his Bond. It is his Bond. And whether or not, you know, in a way, it's the much grittier version of James Bond. You know, the thing about this is it has real stakes and real consequence. And I think with Bond, there's always that element of he's going to come through in the end. He's going to do it. You know, with this, it's always feel like it's knife edged as to whether he's going to make it. But I do think, I mean, Idris could play Bond, but this is his own idiosyncratic take, I think, on it, you know.
Well, Andy, just to wrap up, you know, I got to ask you, you've added this to your Infinity Gauntlet of franchises. Is there another franchise that you have left to do, or do we continue the victory lap and maybe do something else like Lord of the Rings again in a different role?
Oh, well. Oh, let me think. I could reel them all off. You know, Mission Impossible, Star Trek, you know, I mean, there are plenty out there.
Lots of time left. Well, thank you so much, Andy. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, dude. Take care.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our Narcity channel to see more great content.